where even with, it's kind of like when I was on the airplane coming back from a red-eye flight in Long Beach 10 years ago. And I'm all ready to just basically sleep on the red eye after the race in Long Beach. I'm tired. I've got race sludge on me. I'm super excited because there's one open seat next to me. And then just as we're about to take off, this bohemian hippie kid from Minnesota who was off finding himself in Santa Cruz at some cult commune sat down next to me, broke out a bottle of what I thought was patchouli oil, but he claimed it was the tears of 1,000 dead kings, splashed it on himself and then on me, and proceeded to bend my ear for 4 hours about the global conscience and, working with the Illuminati, okay?
What is race sludge?
Thank you for asking. Race sludge is when you've been in the racetrack all day, and the combination of the detritus from the tires that comes off and the exhaust fumes and then your own sweat and SPF 45 and any sort of other substances that may accumulate through the air is race sludge. It's just like a film. It's like a gross film that's on you. So I'm sitting there, and then this guy sits next to me, and he says to me, if you have a thought and you put it into the global conscience, it either comes true or somebody else can steal that thought. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe there's some truth to that. Because, for example, I have the thought of the fact that because sectionals are upcoming, that means we have a snow left in us. And here we are, right? Aren't sectionals starting this week?
Yep, they sure are.
Did I not say like 100? Now, that's not an original thought. That's an Indiana folklore thought. But it was in the global conscious, I guess, and I grabbed it out and then maybe claimed it as my own.
And now it's supposed to rain the rest of the week.
It's supposed to, I don't know if you know this or not. It's supposed to rain between now and the opening day at the track.
Yeah.
That's fine. It's going to be 70 degrees. That's fine, right? We'll take it. But sometimes what you think is your own thought can be poached elsewhere. And then your original thought becomes their original thought. And I think we might be seeing that in the world of sports right now in this market with our teams. For example, and I thought about this as I'm driving in, and I'm thinking about the Combine and the Combine basically coming to an end and some of the great storylines out of the Combine. I think Omar Cooper Jr., the kid out of Lawrence North in Indiana, really showed himself well. I think of quarterback prospects that we've seen over the last 20 years, very few of them conducted themselves better and seemed more in control than Fernando Mendoza. Mendoza is an interesting personality because so often, Eddie, especially at the Combine, when you get quarterbacks that go into the Combine, I don't care whether you're talking about Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, et cetera, et cetera. Typically, when quarterbacks are going in and it is known that they're going to be a number one or at the very worst, like a top 10 pick, they're very guarded in what they say. They're very calculated in what they say. They want to make sure, and more often than not, they're giving you answers that almost as if they stole them off the global conscious because it's the same thing that had been said the year before and the year before. I'll answer a question like most quarterbacks would at the NFL Combine, and there's a point to what I'm getting at here, Eddie. I want you to ask me a question. I'm Jake Query. I'm the 6'4" quarterback out of State U, and I'm thought to be a top 5 selection in the NFL draft, and I'm at the Combine, and I'm taking questions from the assembled mass media about my prospects as a quarterback. You asked me a question that a media would typically ask with the Lightning Bolts have the number 1 overall pick. Go ahead. Well, that's bad because the Chargers are the Lightning Bolts. I just came up with it. The Dragons have the number 1 overall pick. Go ahead.
Hey, Jake. Eddie Garrison with the lightningboltsdaily.com. I've seen a ton of your tape this year, and I feel like you have a ton of skills. But what do you think is your number 1 skill if you were in an interview with a NFL team that you would tell them if they asked you?
I think I love the game of football, and I always want to learn from it. And my skill is I want to make sure that I'm on the field with my guys, and I think that I put people in the best position. And I have great coaches, and I've worked with my coaches, and I look forward to continuing that. And just, I want to be a sponge. I want to soak in and learn everything. And I think my desire to learn all of that is my best skill set, is that I always want to know more about the game of football. Okay, generic answer, right? Every quarterback seemingly has their own version of it. But Mendoza is the first quarterback that I've seen at the combine that seemingly controlled the narrative. Mendoza is the one that was going in, and he is so authentically himself. There's no act to it. It's almost like Mendoza is the last to know how Mendoza is supposed to be, because he is so authentically himself and just so almost relaxed as a result of it. Fernando Mendoza, quite frankly, is the football Tyrese Halliburton. He's this overly optimistic, sunshine and constant rainbow guy that even when you expect that he's going to have a bad day, he comes in and, gosh, he's just so happy, golly jolly. You're like, what in the world? Who took Mr. Rogers' tennis shoes off and put cleats on him? And who put shoulder pads over the sweater? That's a good thing, right? That's a good thing. And as I'm watching the combine and I'm looking at Mendoza controlling the narrative and literally how he is not even remotely creating opportunity for himself to drop in terms of his draft stock, because he's the one that is so outwardly himself and so oblivious to the way he's supposed to be or the guard that he's supposed to have that you can't help but like him even more, no matter who you are. And so that was the other thing that really jumped out at me. And as I'm watching all that and I'm thinking about the storylines of the combine, then I began thinking about the NFL global conscience and how you always have teams that are stealing ideas from the others but claiming them as their own. It's a copycat league. Always has been. Always has been. And right now, because it's a copycat league, Sam Darnold just won a Super Bowl with Seattle. Sam Darnold, who was at one point the guy that was going through the combine and trying to give the scripted answers and gets drafted by the Jets. And it's the Jets. It's the Jets. Joe Namath is the last guy that was able to go to the Jets and have success, right? And so he doesn't have great success there, and Sam Darnold leaves there, and then he has this circuitous journey of different teams where he's played. And he ends up in Seattle and wins the Super Bowl because they have a very good team built around him, and he was, for the most part, took care of the football, had good receivers to throw to. There you go, right? And so it's a copycat league, and other teams see that in the NFL global conscious, and they steal that idea. And therefore, I thought to myself, if Daniel Jones is not close with the Colts, if Daniel Jones has a ways to go, there's too big a gap between what he expects and what he wants and what the Colts are willing to pay him at this point. Maybe it's not so much that as much as it is that Daniel Jones is a smart dude. And his agent is a smart dude. And they know there's no sense in just immediately signing with Indianapolis, because in a copycat league, he fits the mold of Sam Darnold. So it's in his best interest to see what's out there. And to see if Pittsburgh calls. And to see if, wait for it, the Jets call. Or to see if Arizona calls once Kyler Murray gets traded out or they decide what to do with Kyler Murray. I'm just giving generic examples. But Pittsburgh and New York are two teams that there is speculation they could have an interest in Daniel Jones. And in a copycat league, what I realized is, unfortunately, the Colts are copycatting the wrong thing. They're copycatting the wrong thing, and they've painted themselves here into a corner, potentially. Because you have Alec Pierce, who is going to be in demand for a king's ransom. And it's very difficult for the Colts to know how much money they can give Alec Pierce without knowing what it might cost them to retain Daniel Jones. And it's very difficult to figure out how you retain Daniel Jones without knowing how much you're going to have to pay to maintain and retain his biggest weapon in terms of catching the football in Alec Pierce. They literally have a chicken and egg dilemma here. But also, what's gotten the Colts, in my opinion, into this situation is this. And that is that, along with the global conscience of stealing other ideas that we think are our own just because we've seen them out there so many times, and in a copycat league that happens all the time. But we also have, as human beings, we all do it. I am as guilty of this as anybody. You become conditioned into believing or anticipating or reacting to situations based on the way that you have had success with situations previously. And where the Colts really, I think, and Chris Ballard notably, have backed themselves into the corner is that from the time that Andrew Luck retired, I don't know, did you know that Andrew Luck retired, Eddie? Let's just say Andrew Luck has retired from the Indianapolis Colts, and they hope to eventually be able to figure out a path without him, but it happened at a bad time, and so therefore they will throw that card out there whenever it's possible. Actually, they don't as much as their fan base and the media, but nonetheless, I digress. So, ever since that time, each time that the Colts needed to go out and address the quarterbacking situation, they kind of dragged their feet. And then at the 11th hour, stuff just kind of fell into place for them. They had, just prior to that announcement, they had gone out and they had made a trade, seemingly innocuous at the time, for Jacoby Brissett. So they had a guy that could start for them and just kind of keep things afloat. And then it was, okay, they've got to go out and they've got to get themselves a quarterback. They rode that out, and then they've got to get a veteran quarterback. And at the 11th hour, just when it looked like the door was going to shut and you turn the lights off for the night, boom, there's Phillip Rivers. Look what fell into our lap. And then they've got to go out and they've got to sign a veteran player or make a trade or get a veteran that can be a 5 to 7 year guy because they have players around that need a quarterback in that timing. And what do you know? You got Frank Reich, he has history with, there's availability. Carson Wentz right in your lap. Owner doesn't like him. Carson Wentz comes out of a locker room one game, walks past the owner who's got his hand out to shake his hand. I don't know that it was malicious, but Carson Wentz doesn't shake his hand. Carson Wentz doesn't get the vaccine when the owner is very a big, strong advocate for that, etc. They lose critical games down the stretch. Owner says, you got to get this guy out of here. Back to square one. And literally, with Chris Ballard, he's asked about it, and he's like, we got a plan on that, and then awkward giggle, right? Look, guys, shoot, you guys know me, look, and then awkward giggle, and then we'll figure it out.
I care deeply about this franchise.
and then it'll work out. And then at the 11th hour, Matt Ryan falls into his lap. So the point being, I don't need to sit here and go through the entire timeline because I've gotten almost there anyway, but at the last moment, even though Matt Ryan didn't work out, the problems or the lack of addressing them just seemed to magically always work out and take care of themselves. And I think in this situation, I'm not even saying I blame him for it. It's a human nature thing. But I think at the very, the 2% of it in the back of his mind, each time that there may have been an urgency to make sure that this situation was addressed or that they had clear understanding. And don't get me wrong, they may well already have privately an agreement where we look back on it and we go, yeah, I mean, we worried for nothing. I don't think that's the case. And I think part of what has put the Colts in this position is the fallback that takes place for a human nature in your mind, in your own conscience, of the precedent says that these things work themselves out. And these things may work themselves out as they have for us in the past. Things just may fall into place for me as they have in the past. Except for that, you now have other teams because of the Sam Darnold situation and the copycat league that even with the Achilles injury, there are others that are going to be vying perhaps for Daniel Jones' services because he is their version of things just work themselves out and there was a guy available. We have no idea whether Aaron Rodgers is going to come out of his coffee enema cave and decide to play again, and we don't know. We probably won't know for another 3 months. And so at that point, we're going to have somebody. We better have a plan in place. What do you know? Here's a guy, Daniel Jones, that's similar to Sam Darnold that may be available. And look how that worked out for Seattle. Justin Fields hasn't been a great player for us. We had inconsistency there. We do feel like we've got pretty good weapons in terms of our wide receivers and a couple of serviceable backs. Look at what Sam Darnold did. And you know what? Daniel Jones was playing at an MVP level before he got hurt. Maybe he's available, and that will work out for us. And so that curveball now for other franchises is putting Indianapolis potentially into a situation of competition financially that they did not anticipate at this point. And the curveball to all of that is the situation with Alec Pierce. Eddie, I will ask you, if it comes down to it where the Colts need to make a decision right now on which of the two to use the tag on, whether it be the franchise tag or the transitional tag, and we can get into the differences between the two. Transitional is a little more financial, a little more friendly in terms of your finances, but there are transitional tags you can use that allow Alec Pierce to see other people, but in the end, you have the right to make sure that if they do, in fact, swipe right, that you can get them to clear their phone, and then you get the opportunity to sweep in and take that. But either way, if you had to pick one of the two, which is the more important player for the Colts to secure?
I think the more important player to secure in all of this is Daniel Jones over Alec Pierce.
Okay.
Now, Alec Pierce might be the better player, but he's not more important than the quarterback position because as you look at things right now, what are you going to do? Are you going to go out there and trade for Kyler Murray? Are you going to go out there and trade for Tua Tagovailoa? Two guys that are on horrible contracts, and they've got more questions about him than Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I think clearly it's all about supply and demand. Did you have to take economics in Decatur Central?
I took a macroeconomics class.
Macro?
Yeah, I don't remember anything from it.
Now, was that a more detailed than the micro?
I don't know.
Okay.
I just remember supply and demand.
Supply and demand, rule number one that you learn. And if you are a quarterback, the rule of supply and demand is in your favor. That's not to say that there are a lot of Alec Pierces out there. But the supply chain for wide receivers, probably easier to find some sort of, even if it's by committee, replacement for the demand than it is for the quarterback position. But it's a real interesting dilemma for them because I think there were many that believed that the second it was available, that they already had a handshake deal and that they would know Daniel Jones was their guy. And if need be, that would allow them to use the tag on Alec Pierce.
Can I use my tinfoil hat theory real quick?
Go ahead, please. And listen, just so you know, that takes half the Reynolds factory. But yes, go ahead.
So there's a lot of speculation out there. Now, Jeremy Filey wrote about this. Stephen Holder had some reporting on this, that the transition tag seems to be more in play than the exclusive or non-exclusive franchise tag with either Alec Pierce or Daniel Jones. And the more I think about it, Jake, the more it makes sense. Now, the difference between the transition tag and one of the other two is the transition tag is going to be cheaper because it's taking the top 5 players, the top 10 players cap hit versus the top 5. So the Colts, if they use the transition tag on Daniel Jones, they save about $6.5 million. If they use it on Alec Pierce over a franchise tag, they save about $4 million. Now, you mentioned it allows them to go see other people. Now, let's say they use the transition tag on one of those two players. They hit the open market, technically, but they're still underneath the Colts' purview. Kind of like DeAndre Ayton a handful of years ago with the Phoenix Suns.
Right.
And it's like restricted free agency
Correct.
of the NFL. And if a team signs, Daniel Jones or Alec Pierce, and the Colts are like, nah, we're good. We don't want to match that number. That said team has to surrender 2 first-round picks back to the Colts.
So you believe that, for example,
I think that there was more
the Colts
forward
could get
thinking.
their 2 picks right back from New York.
Bingo. That's the forward thinking that I have when you go back to the Sauce Gardner trade, is that they knew, Chris Ballard knew at the time when he made that deal that he's going to have 2 players he could potentially have to franchise tag, and if they use their the transition tag on one of them, they'd essentially get Sauce for nothing.
Other than the player that they're letting go.
Yeah, which was A.D. Mitchell.
No. What I'm saying is,
oh, yeah, I get what you're saying. So
you would be trading Sauce Gardner for Daniel Jones or Alec Pierce.
Right.
Interesting point. Not a terrible point. Look at the big brain on Eddie. That's a good thought, honestly.
And I don't think any team is going to give up 2 first-round picks for either one of those players.
I would tend to agree with that. But, and that's probably true if they know that but again, it depends on whether or not that team outbids the Colts. I do think that, with that said, Eddie, I believe even if Daniel Jones, let's just say that the New York Jets sign Daniel Jones, who has been transitionally tagged by the Colts, meaning that the Colts can look at it and say, you know what? Congratulations. You have a good deal from New York, and we're not going to match it. Then the Jets have to give their 2 first-round picks that they got from Indianapolis. But I don't know if it means that it has to be their own 2 picks or picks they acquired elsewhere. But either way, 2 first-round picks would come back to Indianapolis. And you could sit there and say, that's Chris Ballard playing 3D chess. Except for that, what that does then is completely screws him because they have, who's their quarterback at that point? I would say that is 3D chess, except for that it makes it then puts them in a situation where there's no way that that's their plan and that Riley Leonard starting for them all season long is their best option. That's nothing against Riley Leonard.
You got to remember, ESPN predicted Gardner Minshew was the starting quarterback next year.
Understood. Which is, again, transitional, right? And you're right back to square one. How long are we doing this? Now, you could say this. You could say for Chris Ballard, brilliant once again, buys himself 5 more years. Just extend and extend. Move the timeline. Over the weekend, by the way, did we see Purdue? Did we see Purdue land the knockout blow to Indiana's NCAA tournament hopes? The hell is this guy talking about? Purdue got beat by Ohio State. Exactly. Did that push Ohio State in front of Indiana in terms of the bubble for the NCAA tournament? As Indiana finds themselves in a situation now where they're going to have to beat Minnesota, and they were stagnant at the end of that Michigan State game. And I think some of the holes on Indiana's roster on the day officially today that Ryan Carr, technically I guess it was yesterday, was his first day, that Ryan Carr takes over as the executive director for Indiana basketball, he has to assess and inventory their roster. And yes, it was a roster put together late, but I think it has some holes to it, and I think those holes are now being completely exposed. So what does that mean for Indiana's NCAA tournament hopes? And, in fact, is there a switch that can be flipped? Don Fisher was on the call for the game with Michigan State and joins us on the other side. Eddie, occasionally you hear ads, and I know that we run them. One of the a very popular business are people that get you out of timeshares. You've heard ads for that, right? Like people that get a timeshare condominium and then they can't get out of the contract, so they're businesses that help them break that contract. Those folks should venture out and expand their business into helping you get out of email lists, subscribed email lists. I bought tickets to a Chicago White Sox game in 2017, and I literally 3 times a day get emails about their picnic fundraisers. I've hit unsubscribe like literally every hour for 8 hours a day. It's like a full-time job. I literally just I spent the entire break doing nothing but unsubscribing from email lists. And perhaps what I should have been doing was looking at Indiana's upcoming schedule. They've got Minnesota coming up on Wednesday. Then they close out the regular Big Ten season at Ohio State on Saturday. Now, Joe Lunardi, and I do believe that these things are usually pretty accurate, has Indiana listed as the last team in. But that was before, I believe, their game yesterday against Michigan State. Joining us now, the guy that was on the call for that, Indiana Inside IU Basketball tonight at 7:05 on this radio station. Voice of the Hoosiers is Don Fisher. Don, I'm going to begin with this. Yesterday's game with Michigan State, and notably Indiana's scoring drought towards the second half of that game, did that tell you more, or was that more on Indiana, or was that a credit to Michigan State?
Well, probably a combination of both, Jake. I mean, there's no question Michigan State's a really good basketball team. Probably, at this point, they're going to be one of the teams that get a double bye in the Big Ten tournament. They are playing extremely well right now. Fears was tremendous in that contest last night. And the rest of their team plays their roles really, really well. And Tom Izzo, of course, is a Hall of Fame coach, without question, one of the best in the country, and certainly among the best in the country. And I look at it this way, from Indiana's perspective right now, that was a tough loss, but they played well. They competed. They played right down to the end of the ball game. They gave themselves chances. They couldn't quite get over the hump. I just like what I saw again from Indiana last night over the previous 3 games, of which they got blown out twice, and then Northwestern beat them in a tightly played game. But that was a brutal loss in the sense of what it might mean to the NCAA tournament bid. So all I can tell you right now, Jake, is that I know this team is floundering a little bit. They've got a 4-game losing skid. They've struggled to shoot the basketball consistently. They're getting almost nothing from their bench right now. They got nothing last night in that ball game, and that's got to change. But at the same time, they're so limited in a couple of areas, and if they don't do the shooting aspect of it and don't do that really well, that causes them major problems. And certainly, again, last night, when they get into a drought of any kind, it usually factors in big time.
If you were to examine it, Don, in terms of Darren DeVries and going to that bench and in games, is he not getting, like yesterday, was he not getting great production from his bench because he hasn't maybe utilized them enough to get them at this point into those moments? Or is it the other way around? He hasn't used them enough because they just have not consistently given him depth when he's needed it over the course of the season?
Well, I think as the second half of the season, I would argue that the bench has not been very productive, period. And therefore, at one point or at some point, you lose trust or confidence in that side of the package, so to speak. And honestly, I think right now that's the biggest issue. I think there are guys that are playing, coming off the bench that have struggled. Tatum Conaway has not been the same guy since probably a month ago. Without doubt, Trent Sisley, the freshman, he really doesn't look like he's very confident when he goes out on the floor, and that's a problem because I think that kid can play. I just think right now he's hit that freshman wall, so to speak, and that's hard to recover from sometimes, and that's been kind of the case with him. So the one guy that is coming in there and at least giving him strong minutes at the defensive end of the floor is Josiah Miles. He's got a lot more playing time of late. But they're really a limited basketball team right now. And you can see where Sam Alexis has made a big improvement in his play here in the last half of the season. Reed Bailey has gone the other way, has not gotten better or has not played his best here in the last 10 ball games or so. So it's a team right now, and we said this at the very beginning, that this was a team that was going to be limited in some areas. And the size factor has played a big role as to why they have not been as successful as you would hoped down the stretch of this ball game or of this season.
Inside IU basketball with Don Fisher tonight, 7:05 on this station. Don, I don't know that I've really asked you about this. When it comes to the coaching for Indiana, in the past, there have been times where, myself, probably a lot of people, but where I've been critical of coaching at Indiana, and then I look back on it and I say, I jumped the gun there because I frankly didn't know what I was talking about, or I didn't have enough insight as to what I was talking about. And you try to learn from those things, and in that regard, Darren DeVries, we've now seen him 29 games. You have been around it more so or closer to than most. And what I know is this, I did talk to Ryan Carr about his taking that job. You and I talked about it last week. And Ryan said, Jake, when you look at this roster and the way that they had to put it together, what Darren DeVries has done, in Ryan's opinion, he said, has been tremendous to even put this team together to the point where they're in tournament discussion. And Ryan seemed to be very, very high on Darren DeVries and his coaching acumen and his understanding of the game. What kind of coach is he, Don, and do you concur with that sentiment and observation?
I do. I do. I believe that he's a really good basketball coach. I think he did the best that he could in the portal to get a new roster. He had to replace everybody. So literally, he had to go back out there and find the guys that fit his criteria, what he's looking for in players. And if you look at this roster is basically they are mid-major players. They are not Big Ten caliber players in most of these cases, and I don't say that negatively about the kids. They are who they are and where they have played. And one of the reasons I think they've struggled here in the last half of the season at times has been that very reason. They are playing in Power 4 or Power 5, whatever they call it now. They're playing against teams that have been put together by these coaches that have been around for a while, that kind of thing. And this team wasn't put together the same way as some of these teams have been put together, simply because they had to replace everybody. And when you replace everybody with mid-major players, and these kids are all hard workers and they bust their butts and they play as well as they can, but they're limited. And they're limited in the size factor. They're limited in the physical aspect of it. They're just not as talented as some of the teams that they faced this year, as a lot of the teams that they faced this year. And therefore, I agree 100% with what Ryan's saying, because he's gotten as much out of this ball club as I thought he probably could, especially after judging what the rest of the league looked like after we got into the Big Ten season in a real way. When you look at it from that perspective alone, I think he's done a remarkable job in that sense, but certainly they're not getting quite what they need right now to win the ball games, especially against these upper-level competitors that they've been facing.
Don Fisher is my guest. He's on the Java House Cold Brew Coffee guest line. Don, in conclusion, I mentioned this earlier, and I wanted your thought on it. You're around or aware of the personnel and the personalities of the Indiana Pacers to an extent. And we know, I think everybody in this market knows about Tyrese Halliburton and his overall positivity, and how, I've had people over at the Pacers tell me, he walks in and kind of lifts everybody just with his overall spirit and vibe and positive nature. And it took me a while to have this epiphany, but I wanted to ask you, because you know a little bit about both guys. Is Fernando Mendoza the football version of Tyrese Halliburton, in the fact that he has this overwhelming optimism about him that is then literally just gravitates towards his teammates and kind of lifts everybody? I thought he was outstanding at the Combine and kind of setting the narrative and deflecting any sort of critique about him. And you just want to be around the guy, and that's part of what makes him a great player. Have you observed that as well?
Well, I just think Fernando Mendoza is just a phenomenal person. He's a great football player. There's no doubt about that. What he got from Kurt Signetti this year and the coaching staff to improve his game and how he did it, which means he went to work on the problems that he was having from his previous stints in California, maybe even coming out of high school at that point, because he was not the player this past year that he's been previously in his career. He became a great football player this year because of what those coaches did to help him realize what he was capable of. And then he went out and worked his tail off to get it done. And so when I look at it from Fernando's perspective, he is a great personality, number one. And I say that in the sense of how he treats his teammates, how he deflects everything towards his teammates in a positive way, that they were as much responsible, if not more so, than he. I just think that kind of humility, it transfers over to the rest of the team, and it gives them the feeling that as good as this guy is, we know how good he is, why would we not try to be that way as well? And I think it's just a major reason why. And it's and from a Halliburton standpoint, I think that's a great observation. I mean, they're very much the same kind of player. I think their personalities are a little bit different, but I think they're the same kind of people. And when you get a leader like that, you've got something special.
Yeah, I think it spoke volumes when the guy wins the Heisman Trophy and his teammates are there with him. And he seemingly, I thought it was genuine. I mean, he wanted those guys to hold and handle and lift up that trophy as much as he did. You know what I mean? It was like, for him, it was like it was a team award, which was very impressive.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, that kind of humility is rare these days in athletes. And I'm not saying that there aren't lots of athletes that are humble, but I am saying that it's rare that they deflect to their team all the positiveness. And that's what he does. I mean, he's not a guy that takes credit for anything. And from that standpoint alone, that brings everybody together. It doesn't matter how much money you're making at NIL and all those kinds of things these days, if in fact you don't handle it properly. And man, that kid handled it as best he possibly could have. And it didn't alienate players. It actually brought them together. And that's one of the reasons this team was so successful this year.
Don Fisher will be on the call. Hoosiers and Minnesota coming up on Wednesday. And then on Saturday, it is in Columbus to take on Ohio State. But again, inside IU basketball, 7:05 tonight on this radio station. Don, appreciate the time as always.
Jake, thanks for having me. Just so you know, we're going to have Ryan Carr on the show tonight, too, the last half hour of the show, so it'll be interesting.
Excellent. All right, so Ryan Carr will be on so people can get to know him and what his visions are, if you will, for Indiana basketball. And then Don, after that, will go out and be golfing in the rain all week long. Because it's going to be 70, Don, but it's going to be rainy, so just watch for the lightning.
Hey, trust me, at this time of year, I never get carried away about going and playing golf.
There you go. All right, Don, appreciate it as always.
You bet. Thanks.
Don Fisher joining us on the program. We come back, we will get into the other side of things in terms of the discussion about the Big Ten. I'm talking about Purdue and what may be going on with the Boilers and how they might have dealt a blow to Indiana. Tim Cendrick, by the way, was on the call for Scott McLaughlin over the weekend as Scott McLaughlin runner-up after winning pole in St. Pete. Alex Pillow, no surprise, the winner. But Tim Cendrick back from, of course, his departure from Team Penske, back on that stand with Scott McLaughlin. Going to join us 2:30 today. Tim Cendrick joins us. Chap, coming up 17 minutes from now. But what's going on in West Lafayette next?
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Okay, before we get into Purdue and something that happened over the weekend involving 3 Big Ten teams, Eddie, a clarification on franchise tag, transitional tag, as it may or may not relate to the Colts.
Yeah, so I misspoke there in that opening segment of the show about 15, 20 minutes ago about just the difference between transition and non-exclusive tag. So they have the 3 franchise tags, exclusive tag, meaning can't talk to anybody. You are strictly staying with the team that tagged you. So if they used it on Alec Pierce or Daniel Jones, one of those players cannot talk to other teams. If you use the non-exclusive tag, you're still paying them the same amount of money as you would if you tag them exclusively. It's restricted free agency, so they have the ability to negotiate with other teams. If, let's say, Alec Pierce signs with the New England Patriots and the Colts say, hey, we're good, we don't want to pay you $30 million a year, then the New England Patriots have to fork over 2 first-round picks. If you use the transition tag, it's a cheaper alternative for the Colts, and it's a combination of the exclusive and the non-exclusive. It takes the top 10 salaries at that said position, so it saves the Colts, about $4 million on both position groups, quarterback or wide receiver. But Jones or Pierce can still talk to other teams, and if they agree to a contract with another team and the Colts do not match, the Colts do not get anything in return.
Okay, so, and then it comes down to which player you can. Here's the other thing that needs to be clarified. You can only use the tag on one player. You can't franchise tag Jones and then transitional tag. In other words, you are allowed one tag. You're given a tag and a Sharpie. And when you get that Sharpie, you've got to write on that tag which label you're putting it under. Franchise, transitional, exclusive, whatever else.
Yep.
And then you get to pick one player, boom, that it goes on.
Yes.
For the NCAA now, typically, I'm a natural cynic, right? I'm a cynic about a lot of things when it comes to basketball. I'm the biggest recruiting cynic on the planet. My buddy Mike Byron and I had a conversation earlier today. Byron fascinates me because he sits around and he gets on his laptop and comes up with all these facts and figures and numbers and does all kinds of research, yet can't remember to bring his wallet anywhere we go. Go figure. But how about this, Eddie? Since the year 2001, the last 25 years, do you know how many times Indiana has finished above 500 in the Big Ten in basketball?
And how many years you say?
25.
7.
That's exactly correct.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. Wow.
This is a lucky
And
guess.
you undersold it too, right? That's impressive.
I was like, 7, 8.
He also looked up in terms of recruiting, Indiana's biggest name recruits. You forget, and this is why I'm a cynic when it comes to recruiting. Arguably, Indiana's biggest recruit of the last 10 years was Christian Lander, who averaged 1.4 assists per game in college in a career between Indiana and Western Kentucky.
Lander or Romeo? Not Romeo.
Both are 5
Romeo.
Romeo
Langford.
was a bigger recruit.
I was thinking of Romeoville because of James Boyd.
They were both 5-star players.
Yeah.
Romeo Langford, by the way, here's a shiny penny for you, Eddie, and anybody in the listening audience. If anybody can determine what it is that Romeo Langford is doing right now, send it to me. If you conclusively know or can find information on where Romeo Langford is currently, presumably, playing basketball, send it to me in March of 2026. And that's what I mean about, Braden Smith is a guy that a lot of people overlooked, and he's, may end up being the all-time NCAA assist leader. Romeo Langford had guys in candy striped pajamas lined up around corners in sub-zero temperatures for 2 hours to get his autograph, and he was 17. And I just put out an APB on him 8 years later. But what I'm not a cynic about is bracketology. Because Joe Lunardi, notably at ESPN, more often than not, when Selection Sunday comes out, you look at it, and he has, 66 or 67 of the 68 teams, and he's usually pretty accurate with the seeding as well.
Has he updated since last week?
No. Now, here's the
Okay.
thing. Going into the weekend, okay, so this was as of Friday evening. He had his last 4 in as Auburn, who's lost now 2 in a row, so you would think that that bounces them out. And Auburn's like 15-14. Bruce Pearl can sit up there and talk all he wants about the fact that, like, Auburn deserves to get in. Bruce Pearl left when he did so that his kid could take over, and they've been a dumpster fire. TCU, who has finished strong here, they've won, I think, 2 or 3 in a row, so they have not jeopardized that prognostication. Santa Clara, who lost to St. Mary's but came back and won. No crime in losing to St. Mary's. They're going to get in, and they just beat Gonzaga. And then his last team in going into Saturday, Indiana, who again loses to Michigan State. Now, this is where it gets interesting. First 4 out. So these are the teams that were sitting there peering through the window. You know, this is like the parking lot just outside the Fashion Mall. These are the 4 cars that are circling around, waiting, and occasionally you see some spot, you get super excited, then you pull up on it, and you're like, smart car. Then you keep doing your laps. These are the teams that are sitting there waiting to see if anybody has on their reverse lights. Pitt, who lost over the weekend. So you would think that Pitt probably is being shuttled back into the P.F. Chang's lot, right? After Pitt, New Mexico, okay, they beat San Diego State. They still have 2 remaining games. So they're still circling around. USC, who oddly just lost their best player who's 26, right? They booted him from the program. But USC at this point you would think is done because they've lost 5 in a row. They just lost to Nebraska fairly handily. Matter of fact, their last 2 games they've lost by an average of 17 points. I would think USC's out. And then Ohio State. Ohio State going into the weekend, they were listed as on the outside waiting to see if Indiana had the car in reverse and waiting to, and boom, they go and win against Purdue. I mean, that is obviously.
And they still have a matchup against Indiana coming up.
Yes. And that may be, that game in Columbus might be the play-in game, quite frankly, for the play-in game, if you will. But you would think that Purdue did Indiana no solids. And the thing with Purdue, I mentioned a month ago that I wondered if Purdue wasn't falling victim to the fact that now they are simply, they've been around so long, there's just enough tape on them, the blueprint's out, everyone knows how to beat them. I think that's a factor. I also think realistically that a factor when it comes to Purdue is it just looks like a group where they have major chemistry issues. They do. They look like that. I'm not saying they have it. I'm saying they look that way. And part of that is because they've been around for a long time together. And then you factor in NIL money. That was a theory that I feel like now is, if that theory is incorrect, there has been little to diminish the theory or belittle the theory. And I think Purdue, whether it's that Braden Smith doesn't get along with other guys, I mean, he's making a lot of money. Do other guys resent that? Have they just been around each other enough that it just feels like Purdue has enough talent to overcome lackluster mindset, but they look like their mindset has gone into the lackluster gutter. They have enough talent that they can offset that to an extent. But when it comes down to the brass tacks and you need efficiency in the most peak moments, they have not practiced through, it doesn't seem, and they have not continued to perfect the craft of precision when it matters most, because it feels like you have pistons that are firing at different times. And that's not a good thing. Now, they still have enough talent that can go to the Sweet 16, but it looks certainly like that window is closing on Final Four opportunity here in a year when everybody was excited about it because the Final Four is here in Indy, obviously. So, too, is the NFL Combine. Mike Chappell was there for that. A lot of discussion about the Colts, and Chappell have it with us next. You know, you're sitting there right now and you're thinking to yourself, okay, I'm basically halfway through the workday, right? Which means you got 30 minutes left for the lunch buffet at Chicago's Pizza. And when I say the lunch buffet, I'm talking about the very best because you have multiple options, whether you are in the mood for a deep dish pizza, traditional pizza, the dessert pizza at the end, which is the best, or have it for lunch too. The salad bar with all the fixings, everything fresh, every dressing that you'd like, and a soft drink for just $13. Think about that, $13. And you still have until 1:30 to get in there because it's from 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. every single day at the 18 locations of Chicago's Pizza around central Indiana. But think about this. Your day, you're halfway through it. Think about how early the day began for the folks at Chicago's Pizza because they were in there this morning making fresh the dough, making fresh the breadsticks, everything fresh at Chicago's Pizza with a story in every slice. And if you can't get in there for the lunch buffet, no problem. Still, of course, an excellent dining option for dinner, and I'm talking about the family meal deal. 2 medium, 1-topping pizzas, and a fresh order of those breadsticks, all that for $25. You cannot beat it. Simply cannot beat it. And with Chicago's Pizza, you're talking about people that take pride with a story in every slice, family-owned business and involved in their community. Lots to love about Chicago's Pizza. 18 locations around central Indiana, 25 of them statewide. Find one near you at chicagospizza.com.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
So it is never a downtime. There is no offseason when it comes to the Colts and covering them. It seems like there is always something, which is good because that means it's that much more reason for us to talk to Mike Chappell, who joins us now on the Java House Cold Brew Coffee guest line. By the way, you hear me say that and you say cold brew coffee, but I like a hot, piping, steaming hot cup of Joe, right? Well, that's Java House is exactly that. Cold brew refers to the manner in which they actually brew the coffee itself, get the coffee out of the beans, and that makes it extremely smooth. I'm not a coffee guy, but it is very smooth, this Java House, and a wide array not only of coffee, but teas and, of course, the liquid science hydration beverage, the energy drink, all available, javahouse.com. Or if you're going into one of their stores, their cafes, if you will, you can always use the app ahead of time. Download the Java House app. Use Jake25 for 25% off. But Chap joins us from CBS 4 and Fox 59. Mike, I'll begin with this question that typically I do this time of year as the combine starts to wind down, and that is, did anything come out of this combine in 2026 that you did not anticipate going into it? Is there anything new we learned that came as a surprise?
Oh, if I had to, and this is where you gets into reading between the lines of what somebody says, probably that Michael Pittman's probably will be in the picture for 2026. I think it's easy to write him off because you can save $24 million and all that stuff by cutting him. I thought Chris Ballard sort of said that he'll be back here in some form or fashion, with a restructured, extended contract, whatever. And then also the news that came out in my mind was that DeForest Buckner and Mooney Ward, for the most part, plan on playing next year. That's huge. That's huge. The rest of it, not really. The thing with Alec Pierce and Daniel Jones and long-term deals or tags and all that. So much of that is it's as what I say, deadlines for actions. Well, we got a deadline coming up tomorrow with the franchise or transition tag deadline, and then the next deadline is March 11th, when pending free agents can contact other teams to see what's out there. So the really bad deadline is March 11th to get Jones and Pierce done. And if you can't get them both done, then the deadline's tomorrow, or you tag one of them, and those are big decisions. They just are, and it's just complicated, as they always are when you're talking 40-some or 30-some million dollars on guarantees and all this stuff. And on one hand, the Colts cannot let these guys, either one of them, sniff the open market. More so Pierce, because somebody's going to look at what he can bring, and Buffalo, Kansas City, New England, and say, man, this is what we miss. Jones is a little more complicated because of the Achilles, and let's be honest, he's had in his career, he's had like a year and a half of really good football, and that 1 year in with the Giants, was it in 22? I can't remember what year, when they made the playoffs. And then this past half year when they're 8-2 and great guns, the rest of it's been either not good enough or injuries. So his is a little bit more complicated. But I'm telling you, if he gets a chance to talk to somebody, Minnesota, you think they don't regret not re-signing him or Sam Darnold? Somebody will give him a good offer if he gets out there, and there's sources and discussions that now they're considering the transition tag with one of them. I've never ever been a fan of the transition tag because it's conducive to you losing a player, because you get a chance to match the offer, but if you don't match it, you get nothing in return. And if let's say I'm the Tennessee Titans, and I really like Alex Pierce, and Pierce gets a chance to, if he's a transition player and we can sign an offer sheet, I'm making that offer sheet so nasty that the Colts can't match it. You have another team doing your negotiations for you. I remember, where I'm dating myself, back in the early 90s, they signed the Colts, the Buffalo Bills put the transition tag on Will Wolford, a really, really quality left tackle, and the Colts signed him. And Bill Polian was here one of his first couple of years. Remember, he used to be the Buffalo guy, and they put some kind of a poison pill in the offer sheet to where Wolford had to be the highest paid offensive player on the team. Well, what the Bills couldn't do because they had Jim Kelly, and the Colts didn't have that kind of a guy, so it was really hard to do. I think they've eliminated poison pills, but the fact of the matter is that if somebody has the transition tag and another team tries to sign him away from you, they're gonna make the offer so that you really can't match it.
So, Chap, let me ask you this:
Yeah.
because Eddie brought this up earlier, and I thought it was a very poignant observation from Eddie. I think it's the transition tag. There is one of those, the exclusive tag. Excuse me, the exclusive tag. As I mentioned it earlier, okay, it's like when you're doing your Christmas wrapping, and you
Sure.
get that little tag that says to and from. Okay, so there is one tag. The Colts are allowed one tag.
Correct.
And they write on that to, and they write either Daniel or Alec. And then the Colts with their Sharpie label whether they're making that a franchise tag, a transitional exclusive tag, a transitional tag, and all of those different things have different variation of what it would mean for the Colts if they were to lose said player. Or in the franchise tag, they cannot lose the player. But with the exclusive tag, if, for example, Minnesota or the Jets were to make an offer to Daniel Jones that the Colts decide not to match, the Colts would get 2 first-round picks as a result.
Correct.
Is it possible that the reason Ballard sent away 2 first-round picks is because he knew there was the possibility that he would be using said tag on Daniel Jones, and that as a result, in a worst-case scenario, he would then get those picks back, and basically it would be a Sauce Gardner for Daniel Jones trade?
Not even the Cleveland Browns would give up 2 first-round draft picks for Daniel Jones. With all due respect, that won't happen. And just to be clear, there's an exclusive franchise tag which you put on the guy, and it's like averages of five players at that position. With Jones, it's like $55 million if you exclusive it. Non-exclusive, it's like $43 million for Jones, and he can negotiate with somebody else. And then if you don't, you can either match it or you get 2 first-round draft picks. The transition tag is just flat. It's like the average of the 10 players. You can match it or you lose the player. So there's three levels.
So you think if they put the exclusive tag on Jones, that secures that they will get Jones because no one would be willing to part with 2 first-round picks in order to get him?
Well, if they put the exclusive on him, he can't talk to anybody.
I'm sorry, whichever one it is that they get the 2 picks.
The non-exclusive, that's the one. If you want to ensure that you're not going to lose a player without paying premium prices, you do the non-exclusive, and then again, that's for Jones. That's $43 million, so he can go out and get 4 years, $160 million from somebody, and you can either match it, which is higher than maybe what you want to pay, $40 million, whatever. And but then again, if you don't match it, that team gives you 2 first-round draft picks, and there's just I can't envision any team giving up 2 first-round draft picks for Daniel Jones. And if that's the case, that would be brilliant. That's like Kevin Costner in Draft Day, getting your picks back. But and with all due respects to any GM, to say, I'm going to trade Sauce Gardner, give up 2 first-round draft picks, but next March I'm going to put the tag on Jones and we'll get those picks back. That would be incredibly, what's the nice word, stupid, because you're just not going to get.
Do you think do you think the Colts thought that retaining Daniel Jones was going to come with less competition than it might?
Probably. And yes. And again, I could argue each way on which one you should tag. The thing with Jones, and if I could only sign one, I'm going to re-sign Daniel Jones because he's a quarterback. As much as I respect what Pierce brings, if the quarterback doesn't work, we've seen this since Andrew Luck retired. If the quarterback doesn't work, you're screwed. You just are, and you might be anyway if Jones doesn't make a complete recovery from the Achilles, or if the first 10 games were just one of those stretches that he got on. He's got to be the guy. He's got to be the guy that we saw the first 10 games. And if that's the case, they're in decent shape. But that's why I just ideally you get them both signed. But if that's the case, you got to get them signed by tomorrow. So then you're not worrying about the tag. And if you tag one of them, you sure as hell better be able to sign the other one by March 11th, which is when they can contact other teams. So it's just going to depend on, and then once you tag a guy, let's say you tag Pierce, all of a sudden, in my mind, Jones's leverage goes up because now you got to re-sign him because you can't put him on the market because somebody's going to. There are teams that needs quarterbacks. I mean, again, Minnesota makes the most sense, but Miami's going to reload. Arizona's going to reload. Who the hell knows what Cleveland's doing? I mean, you could, who knows? So that's why I say it's risky business, and it's interesting talk. And the Colts know they probably have a good idea what's going to happen. Whether they can get both guys done, I don't know. But again, if you tag one, you better be darn sure you're close enough that you're going to close the deal on the other guy. However you want to do it, Jones tag or tag Pierce, because all of a sudden, if you don't sign that other guy to the long-term deal, you're probably going to lose him. And they've made it very clear. I mean, shouting from a bullhorn that Pierce and Jones are going to be part of their team in 2026.
Chap, let's look forward. Mike Chappell's my guest, CBS 4 WXA and Fox 59, where you can see and read his work. And, of course, he is on the Java House Cold Brew Coffee guest line. Let's say it's Halloween, okay? So we got, we got almost 7 months before this is reality, 7.5 months. But it's Halloween, and the kids are coming by the palatial Chap estate there in the Grove, and you're handing out the full-size candy bars as you do. And you decide because it's Halloween.
And all that stuff.
What's that?
Raisinets and all that kind of
That's
stuff.
right.
Nobody likes.
That's right. So you decide that you're going to dress as the Colts starting quarterback, and it's been a great year. The Colts are off to a good start, and their quarterback's healthy, and the guy that everybody, that gives them the best chance to win that was available for them when they showed up at Grand Park is their quarterback. You are dressed as who?
Number 17 jersey, Daniel Jones.
Okay.
If it's anybody else, it will be a bad Halloween. It'll be bad Christmas, and it'll be bad for 2 or 3 years.
Now, for that reason, when you're passing out your Raisinets, there's one kid that's dressed up as the Colts' best wide receiver. And you say, oh, go out in the yard and I'll throw you the Raisinets into your pillowcase. The kid runs out, and you notice you look at the back of his jersey as he's running out. He's wearing the jersey of what player?
The best receiver?
That they will have on the roster. Keep in mind they were able to retain Daniel Jones.
The best is a relative term. Michael Pittman. I still think he needs to be their best receiver.
Well, what I'm getting at is Alec Pierce on the roster.
Yes,
are they in a situation right now
yes.
where it is going to be they have to keep that they're only
yes.
Are they only going to be able to keep one of the two?
No, I think they keep both. Again, it's not easy, and it's all about leverage and all that. They've gone into this. There was a quote from Chris Ballard. I think it was either at the Combine or one where, it's Jones and Pierce, and then we'll work everything else around those two guys. Everything is in. I understand Jones has leverage, one because he's a quarterback and they were 8-2 and all that, but he's still coming off an Achilles. He is. So it's not like somebody could offer him 2 years, $100 million. Maybe they can, because desperation forces guys to do a lot of bad things. But I just think that in the fact that they both want to be here. Although having said that, you go where the money is. Neither one of these guys are going to give the Colts a hometown discount. When you're Alec Pierce and you finally get that first free agent contract opportunity, you've got to maximize it. You do. That's why the franchise tag is a cool thing, is because it's guaranteed. Once you sign it, it's like for Jones, it's 1 year, $47 million, guaranteed. But what players want is more security, 2 or 3 years, and I understand that. That's why I say whenever, and we've talked about this, whenever you hear whatever Jones gets, whatever Pierce gets, let's say Pierce gets 4 years and $100 million, $25 million a year. The only thing that matters is how much is guaranteed. Did you get 40 million, 50 million, 60 million? Because whatever's not guaranteed can go away when they cut you. So it's all whatever. Someone was talking to me the other day at the Combine. Well, how many years and how it doesn't matter. The years and the fat number at the end is what is guaranteed. That's all you got. We're talking about with Pittman, and they can save $24 million and all this against the cap. That's because you can make that last year go away. And all of a sudden it wasn't a 3 year, $70 million. It was 3 years and $50 or $46 million, which is still a pretty good deal. But if it's not guaranteed, it goes away. So whatever goes on, pay attention to the guaranteed money. And it's just, again, when a team is as transparent as the Colts are in how important their next season or two is with Pierce and Jones, and both players want to be here if the numbers fit, and that's always, the devil's in the details. So this doesn't start from an antagonistic point at all, but it still has to work. Like I say, Jones isn't going to come back here. Well, they gave me that chance, so I'm going to give him a cut rate. No, it doesn't work that way. And the same with Pierce. As much as he wants to be here, if he gets a chance to talk to some other team and they say, we'll give you $30-35 million a year, which is way too much. But it only takes one team to be crazy.
Is there a number that would price either one of them out?
I don't know. With a quarterback, I don't know. With Jones, I thought $45 million. I don't know. An average. That's why the franchise number is such a good barometer on what your average would be. Although that's awful high that's high for Jones in my mind, because again, he missed the last 7 games and he's recovering from an Achilles. And receivers normally, again, Pierce, as great as he is with what he does, the most catches he's had in a season, I think, is 47. So there are nuances to each situation. But if either player gets a chance to test the market, there will be a team. All it takes is one that will say, man, we got a chance to land Alec Pierce. We got a chance to land Daniel Jones, even with the recovering Achilles. They'll do it, and they'll probably – and there's a good chance they would price the Colts out of matching it, because that's what you do unless it's a franchise tag. If they do – that's why I'm saying I'm against the transition tag, because teams would make it difficult, if not impossible, for you to match.
Chap, in conclusion, when I was at the Combine and then later watching it, I'm such a cynic about the Combine, and I want you to tell me why I'm wrong. I'm looking at people are going crazy over 40 times. Oh, look how slow this guy was.
Right.
Excuse me. Look how slow this guy was in the 40 time, or look at the blazing. And I'm thinking to myself, Jerry Rice ran a 4.7. I know it's a different era to an extent. Reggie Wayne ran a mid 4.5s, right? I mean, Larry Fitzgerald, I think, was like a 4.6. Chris Carter. Different era, maybe. But I got a long list of guys that got standing ovations after their 40 time that literally they're sitting in a bar right now somewhere going, you want to watch my 40 time again on YouTube?
Yeah.
What am I missing here? I
mean, that's what, they say, well, it's not important, but it is. And then who was at Cincinnati? Was it a first round pick? John Ross, a receiver.
Remember that? Yep.
And Tennessee. And again, A.D. Mitchell timed out well. But then so did Alec Pierce. I just always thought that the game tape and the guy that played 4 years or 3 years and did that, and the other, don't you, and all your campus visits, don't you put more weight on that? Again, date myself, the all-time bust was Mike Mamula, was a Boston College defensive end where he just then, 3 years ago, Anthony Richardson. I mean, he had numbers that may never be matched by a quarterback. And to some extent, the Colts really relied on that. They were also pressure. There was pressure to get a quarterback, and I'm confident that Jim Irsay really said, hey, we need a quarterback. And all that was left at number 4 was Richardson and Will Levis. And as it turned out, either one would have been wrong. I would put more emphasis, like, what do I care what an offensive lineman's 40 time is? I want to know what his short burst is and the cones and all that stuff. That's important to him. I don't put a lot into that. I don't pay a lot of attention to it, especially when we haven't got a first round draft pick. When the Colts are drafted in the second round, all I look for is whether they need to redo the defensive line. They need to redo linebacker. They're probably going to draft an offensive lineman in the 4th round, because that's what you do, because you're always looking to have depth there. And now if they would lose Pierce, then all of a sudden my second round emphasis goes on a receiver. I don't think that happens, but yeah, I don't get too bent out of shape with that. But guys do, and God love them for doing it, because then when it comes time to evaluating players going into the draft, I pay attention to Daniel Jeremiah, Dane Brugler. Those guys do the homework, and I believe in them. I trust them. Some guys not so much, but those guys are pretty on it. But I just think what you do over the course of your career, and what you didn't do over the course of your career, like raising red flags for whatever indiscretion, I think that should carry so much more weight. Although I tell you, we've talked to Reggie Wayne about when they do the position drills with the receivers, and certain guys catch his eye. He was off the charts in favor of Alec Pierce.
Well, Josh Downs is one of them, right?
And Josh Downs, yes, sir. And until last year, Downs had 2 really good years, and then last year, for a lot of reasons, not quite so much. Tyler Warren really impacted Josh Downs' game, but yeah, the sheer numbers, I know why they do it, but let your eyes and let your evaluation over the course of 3 or 4 years carry more weight than what a guy. Although some of those vertical jumps were like 43 inches. That's
Well, and I get it.
incredible.
Like, here, listen, before I'm a complete cynic that just dumps on everything, I mean, Omar Cooper Jr., the kid out of Lawrence North in Indiana, when they showed his vertical leap, and you go, okay, well, that is applicable, right? I mean, the Penn State game, hello, I mean, there are areas where that is applicable,
Right.
Your starting center, they don't jump ball, you know what I mean? I mean, so.
Right. But it's a total package. And if you have two or three players that you're considering and there's not a lot between them, well, then you go say, well, this guy did this at the combine, this guy did that. And then, probably the athleticism is maybe a tipping point. But I kind of feel that there's probably more mistakes made because well, let's go back and look at the tape and this guy look at this get off and all this, and like you said, Marvin Harris. We asked Marvin Harrison one time how fast he was because they didn't really time him. He said, "Well, I'm fast enough."
Yeah.
Like Jerry Rice. People didn't catch Jerry Rice, and Reggie ran such good routes and had such great hands. Not that he was slow at all, but let your eyes and your long time evaluation that your scouts who spend time with these guys listen to them. And I've always said, and a lot of GMs have agreed that the combine, almost the most important thing is the medicals you get from it, to where you reaffirm this guy's okay from an injury, or this guy had a broken something in senior in high school, and
right. Or is this tendon still
that's where you really right?
Heart, I mean, all of it, right? Mike Chappell, the guest, Java House Cold Brew Coffee guest line, Combine, wrap it up, and CBS 4 WXI and Fox 59, not only your coverage for that, but obviously this saga with Jones, Pierce, what comes of all of it. Chappell be on top of it, as always. Mike, appreciate the time, as always.
You guys be well. Talk at you next week.
All right, Mike Chappell joining us. We just talked about the fact that sometimes it's about production on field. And there was just an interview done about exactly that. And the interview actually, I think, shed from the top of the Salesforce Tower what a mistake the Colts made with Anthony Richardson. And the interview was done with Chris Ballard. I'll let you know what he said next.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
All of the championship rounds, the Final Four is here.
You forgot to turn your mic on, so your entire start of that segment.
My mic's on.
Now it is.
It must not have hit then because I definitely hit it. But
Yeah.
big year on the radar for college basketball in Central Indiana because not only do you have the Final Four here, but Division II, the various levels, all of them here, their championships in Indianapolis and tournaments as well. You have upcoming the kickoff. March starts here, if you will, at the Coliseum at the State Fairgrounds, the Corteva Coliseum.
And May ends here.
What's that?
I said in March ends here too.
It does.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Everything comes to, actually, Division I, Division II, and all of the championships are here this year.
Yes, exactly. I don't know why I said May.
But
Can you tell them what you think about the 500?
Nothing wrong with that. The tournament begins, though, for the Horizon League. That's the first ticket punched. That's why March starts here. We will talk to their new commissioner, coming up on Thursday. Also, we have tickets to give away for the Women's Big Ten tournament. Correct, Eddie?
We do. It'll be 4-pack of tickets for this weekend.
Which will be very cool.
Yes.
And we will give those away between now and the end of the show. We will give away a 4-pack of tickets for the Women's Big Ten tournament. Todd McShay. You remember Todd McShay, obviously, Eddie, right?
Todd.
Todd McShay, who I think really, and I know that he had some personal things that he had to work through, but Todd McShay had gotten to the point where he was kind of alongside Mel Kiper at ESPN as the leading analyst and guru, if you will, of scouting players. He is now doing a podcast, and the podcast that he does, he had on The McShay Show is the podcast, and he recently had on an NFL executive that had this to say about the quarterback position in the NFL coming off of college, okay? And, the fact that it can be hard to evaluate, especially like in the NIL era maybe, because guys, you don't know if they're going to a situation that's the best for them and they're getting a contract, whatever else. The following was said to Todd McShay. One of the real positives, I think, of NIL, I truly believe that if I were a quarterback, it's not about being a first-round pick. It's about having a career. The more snaps you can get in college, the better off you are going to be. Every kid. I don't care if you're the first pick in the draft, if you have eligibility left, stay and be prepared as you can. Because once you enter the league, the clock starts. And if you have a 1 next to your name, it starts and it's ticking twice as fast as any other player in the draft's clock. So having those guys with play history and being ready, I think this NIL is going to be very beneficial for both quarterbacks in general, but for us, because now if they'll do it, they will have longer careers. The more play experience you have, the more you've seen, the better chance you have for success when you get into our league. No one has cornered the market on exactly what works and what doesn't work. It takes a little bit of luck. It takes a little bit of a kid who's failed and struggled. It's a good thing because they're going to struggle at our level. It's rare when a quarterback comes in and lights it up right away. They got to fail. They got to go through some hard stuff. They got to stand on the edge of the abyss and not jump and handle it. End quote. So in other words, the NIL is good because a guy can stay in college, still get his money, and learn because you need reps. You need starts.
Look at Dante
you need
Moore.
Failure. You need all of that.
Yeah, look at Dante Moore with Oregon, Jake.
That quote, correct. Dante Moore going back, he's getting the money, right? He's going to get the reps.
Yeah.
That quote, all of it, is from Chris Ballard to Todd McShay. That right there is a guy, and I guess I'll give him credit, but here's the thing. He said out loud the quiet part that was not so quiet at the time that he drafted Anthony Richardson that everyone was saying. They gave him the keys too early. And I know that you need guys to fail so that they can learn from failure. But with Anthony Richardson, and I get it. I get it. With Anthony Richardson, he fell in love with the traits. He fell in love with the combine. He fell in love with, I remember vividly being out at the combine and people coming up and they're like, have you seen the kid out of Florida, Anthony Richardson, when he came out to do his, have you seen how big this guy is and the things that he did? Holy cow. And I remember walking with someone who would know, and I will absolutely stand on this mountaintop and tell you this. And of course, now, unfortunately, the person I'm about to speak is not here to set that record straight. But I walked out of the combine, 23, whatever year that was, when you had Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis. Those were the four thought to be top quarterbacks. And I walked out of that combine. And for those that don't know, the combine and the radio row and the media and the interviews that are done are all done still are in one of the convention center big conference halls that are right off Capitol, on the north end of Capitol, closer to Lucas Oil Stadium. So when you walk out of it, you walk down and then you go all the way down past like the older area of the convention center to the walk tunnel that goes towards the Hyatt and whatever else. I made that entire walk, that entire time, with somebody who knew Jim Irsay as well as anyone. Wasn't Jim Irsay, but it's somebody who knows him as well as anyone. And literally for 50% of that walk, the person was telling me how much Jim Irsay loved Will Levis. And I was convinced that was going to be the guy. And obviously they went with Richardson, and then afterwards said that Anthony Richardson, if he was available and the Colts had the number one pick, of course he would have been because they had the number one pick. The Colts said, if we had number one, that's who we would have taken. We would have still taken Anthony Richardson. Because this is what happened. Not only do quarterbacks need to learn from failure, but so too do executives. Like the failure of falling in love with the clock and how short an amount of time it ran during a 40. Like the failure of falling in love with the size and the quote-unquote arm talent and the physique and the Adonis Atlas-like nature of a player. And all of those positives that can come. Falling in love with those things, but not paying attention to whether or not a guy coming out doesn't have this, quote, the more play experience you have, the more you've seen, the better chance you have for success when you get into our league. No one has cornered the market on exactly what works and what doesn't work. It takes a little bit of luck. It takes a little bit of a kid who's failed and struggled. It's a good thing because they're going to struggle at our level. It's rare when a quarterback comes in and lights it up right away. They got to fail. They got to go through some hard stuff. And when you are saying those quotes, I truly believe that if I were a quarterback, it's not about being a first-round pick. It's about having a career. The more snaps you can get in college, the better off you're going to be. The more snaps you can get in college, the better off you're going to be. The more snaps you get in college, the better off you're going to be. Where Chris Ballard failed is he forgot his own words right there. The more snaps you can get in college, the better off you're going to be. And instead, he got caught up in the clock. He got caught up in the clock and the immeasurables and the hand size and all of those things. And he fell in love with the intangibles. And he didn't heed his own. And maybe he's now learned that. When he says that players need to learn from failure, maybe what Chris Ballard was doing right there was admitting that Chris Ballard learned that so too do executives, and that his experiment with Anthony Richardson was a failure because Richardson didn't have the snaps he needed in college because the Colts took him too early and handed him the keys. And they didn't give him the chance to learn and say, in our league, it doesn't matter whether you are the first pick or a later pick. It's about reps. It's about practice. It's about getting to know it. It's about going through some stuff. And part of going through some stuff is being in the back of the room in the meeting and soaking in film. I think Jeff George said it best when he said one of the biggest challenges, and Jeff George had the arm of God, right? But Jeff George said, when I got in the league, the hardest part was not the skill factor of it, but looking in a huddle with guys that have been playing in the league for 10 years and expecting them to listen to what I was saying. I didn't know how to lead because I'm 10 years younger than these guys. And in Richardson's case, he not only didn't have the arm of God yet and the accuracy, he didn't have the leadership and the maturity to lead that locker room, and they threw him in there and threw him to the wolves. And they did it. They threw him in there, and they threw him to the wolves, despite the fact that he didn't have the more snaps in college and the better off he could be. That's Chris Ballard not only saying that quarterbacks need to proceed with caution, but so too do executives.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Sunday, July 21st, Ruoff Music Center. These guys, that would be Santana, will be playing along with the Doobie Brothers. That's a pretty big show.
You think there's going to be some doobies in there?
And brothers.
Yeah.
Right?
Sisters, too, maybe?
Sisters as well, yeah. Right? We have tickets to give away for this, correct?
We do.
And how would you like to do so?
Let's do it on the text line.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So how would you, Eddie, like to do this? 317-239-1070 is the text line number. In what fashion are you giving these away? Are we doing just simply first one to write in? Are we doing trivia? Are we doing
or do we do a keyword?
QR?
Oh, gosh, no. No.
We went to dinner on Saturday night. IndyCar was this weekend. I was actually here. And so after qualifying was done on Saturday, we went to Parks Place Pub up in Fishers.
Good spot.
In front of the show. It's a great place. And, two things I noticed, by the way. And first off, the menu, you use the QR code, which is fun, right? So QR. And I thought of that. Also, the other thing I noticed, they have flags from basically, all the local teams, but then Division I schools, flags hanging from the ceiling, which is cool. There were 2 Division I schools in the state that I noticed they don't have. They do not have, at least by my eye in scouring it, they did not have a flag for Indiana State, and they did not have a flag for IU Indy.
But they did for Purdue, Fort Wayne, and Ball State?
Yes. Good question on Purdue, Fort Wayne. They definitely have Valpo. They have Evansville. They have Butler. I think they do have Purdue, Fort Wayne. But I immediately got a hold of Luke Basso, the athletic director at IU Indy, and said, we need to go in there, have a beer, and present them with a flag, right? JMV perhaps can bring in an Indiana State flag because he was able to I was Sycamore Sam, but he got to actually do the starting horn for them, and they won. How about this right away? Hey, Jake, the code should be QR for Santana, yes. Jake, as someone who has negotiated contracts and deals for 48 years, I think that the Colts should let Pierce and Jones try the free market. Either way, 2026 is a learning building year, but this way you aren't overpaying. That from Dave in Beech Grove. Okay. Jake, don't forget to talk about my favorite team and your new adopted team, the Buffalo Sabres. It's been a remarkable turnaround this year and hopefully a 14-year playoff drought coming to an end. I don't want to jinx anything as we saw what happened to the 7-1 Colts. Yeah, they made a GM change in Buffalo. And the Sabres, I'm all in. I got the hat and everything. I'm all in. Me, Byron, and McConnell are going out to Buffalo to go see the Sabres play. We adopted the Sabres as our team. Go Sabres. Go. That beautiful logo, is it not? Right?
What?
Eddie has no idea what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
So what did you decide on the tickets, Eddie? Because everybody's texting in now.
I guess we're going to go with the first person that did the QR Santana Doobie Brothers text.
Heck yeah.
I don't know.
Heck yeah. People know what the QR is, man. I'm telling you, it is overtaken things.
It's not overtaking anything.
No, it's very popular.
No.
Very, very popular. QR is the way we speak in the vernacular, right? Pacers over the weekend, losers yesterday at home at the Fieldhouse. Eddie, right now, things are going exactly as we want them to go, right? I'm telling you,
Yes.
people are still showing up and going to the games, right?
Yeah, it's interesting that the NBA is trying to figure out ways to tank, and there's so many teams out there that have and their fan bases have an understanding and are receptive and are all right with their team tanking. Like Pacer fans are showing out to games now. I wouldn't say that if you're looking at New Orleans, and you're looking at Sacramento, Utah, and the other teams that are in the Brooklyn in the tank off. I don't think fans are showing up to those arenas, though.
Correct. I think also, it's obviously we saw, and we talked about this, Quentin Jackson getting now a 3-year deal. So there is some benefit. He's a guy, we talked about it with Tony East. He can score in bunches. And there is part of me that was kind of wondering why he had not gotten a longer-term deal out of this, because the guy has toiled his way through 10-day contracts. Can you imagine? I guess now it would be a little bit easier because you're playing for the Boom, which is right in, the metro area, and it's a beautiful new arena. They got a mascot too. You think I could get in that, Bobby? Bobby in the mascot outfit?
I don't know. You'd have to finagle your way in there, but now that you've tried to make that proclamation over the radio, I don't know if they can let you do that.
That is correct.
You should have done that in QR.
See,
QR.
see, Eddie, yes, Eddie, yes.
No.
Do we have? Yeah, you see, you don't even realize you did it. You. I told you it's sweeping the nation.
It's
taken over. Kids love it.
Nope.
The QR, you did it right there.
I know I did it.
And you had fun with it, didn't you? You couldn't even do it without smiling.
I think
you
it's
look
stupid.
like, you know what you look like right there? You look like Dale Griffith, the Dell or whatever Griffith, that sells shower rings. You looked right there.
Excuse me?
As you said it to me, you said, and I quote, you said, I like me. I like me. That you were smiling. You looked like Candy from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles right there with just a perma-grin on your face as you said the QR. No, you don't want to admit you did it.
I know I did it, but
you didn't mean to do it, did you?
Yeah, I did it on purpose. I'm like, this is so stupid, but it's going to make Jake
proud. No.
It's a happy dad moment for Jake.
Okay. But anyway, I back to my point. Can you imagine if you were, when it was nothing against Fort Wayne or the Mad Ants, but when that was the G League affiliate, if you were designated, can you imagine that drive? I know it's only 2 hours. But driving up to Fort Wayne, you're playing up there, then you got to drive it back down to here, whatever else. At least now you're still in the same area. You're going to a new arena. There is some juice to it, then some buzz. It's a cool place to play. But I just can't imagine, as I go to games and I watch those guys that are on the two-way deals, and to just know the overall difference in everything from the per diem to the travel to, I think the thing that really made me think about it was I was in the airport in mid-November, I think it was, and came back at like an odd time, and I'm walking through that airport where you just kind of have that post-airport early flight glaze in your eyes, walking through, and before me was the Boom, the roster. I think they were off a commercial flight, and I'm like, this is just so different than the NBA. So to go from one on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, to the other on Tuesday, Thursday would be a challenge for certain. Tim Cendrick going to join us bottom of the hour. We come back. Two things that took place just in terms of what's out there and what may be falling into place as it comes to the Colts. Chris Ballard said sometimes you got to learn from failure. Could we see it again? We'll explain. Hey there, Jake Query for Game Day Men's Health. You've heard me talking about it. Love the folks at Game Day Men's Health up in Carmel. They also have locations, by the way, in Avon, Fishers, and Greenwood. Testosterone replacement therapy, peptide therapies, weight loss injection, those things, guys, especially if you're over the age of 40, you just feel that kind of that sluggish nature. You notice that it's getting harder to get rid of that belly fat. You're just trying to get back in the game, whether it be your energy level, your recovery level from workouts. Game Day Men's Health is there with all of it, with an in-house laboratory where you can get treated and get back to living your best life and get back in the game. All of it, of course, taking place with FDA-approved pharmacies overseeing all of the work. And when I went in there, I was amazed, not only at how cool and friendly they were, but also just the efficient nature in which I was in and out and then getting back in the game, so to speak. Peptide therapies, I absolutely love it because I have been back getting set for the mini. Notice the recovery time is not as long as it once was. Game Day Men's Health. GameDayMen'sHealth.com is the website where you can go look through all the therapies they provide. You can also sit down during the consultation. If you want to run it past the doctor for them as well, they are totally cool with that. Great folks. Game Day Men's Health. Find them online at GameDayMen'sHealth.com. That's GameDayMen'sHealth.com.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Now, I don't know if you saw this or not, Eddie, but now we have, and this is cool. I enjoy this. Within this building now, and this has been the case for a couple of years, but we were in a much bigger building before. So now the building that we are in, we have two sister stations. One is Fuego, which, of course, airs the occasional Butler basketball game. And then in addition to that, Telemundo is done out of this building. And the anchor for Telemundo, super nice guy, I just saw him in the hallway. And I said, hey, listen, I want to undergo like a new thing, if you will, a new process with you. And he said, okay. And I said, each time that I see you, I would like for you, I don't see him every day, right? We run into him, I don't know, three, 4 times a week. He's a colleague, right? Super nice guy. And I'm so impressed by the fact he's native of Venezuela. And I was talking to him about, he's a news anchor for Telemundo. And he was telling me that growing up, learning a second language was a real goal for him, and he now knows 3 languages, which to me is incredibly impressive. And I think now I've heard that not only as you get older is it harder to learn a language, but I also believe that as you that English is one of the hardest to learn for people of different languages because it doesn't have a lot of derivative. Spanish is a lot like Portuguese, and some languages are similar to others. English, I don't know as much. I just hear from other people that it's a very hard language to learn. But so I said to him, I said, when I see you each day, I want you to say something to me, just a phrase in Spanish, and see if I can figure out what it is that you were saying. And he said, oh, okay, this is fun exercise. So today, he said to me, today is a day of good news. And I was able to make out good, obviously, buena. And then for today, he said dias, which I knew that was day, and lunes, which is today. All I know is this. So I'm going to, I don't think this is going to help me become bilingual by any stretch, but why not take advantage of a great resource like that and learn new things? And when I look at my phone and I'm sitting there, okay, sábado, I know how to say some of the days in Spanish. It would be next, and I don't know how you say next in Spanish, but lunes, the next time that we see sol. Sol is sun, right? S-O-L?
Yes.
We're not going to see it between now and next Monday, just so you know. They turned off, they actually turned off the sun about an hour ago. It's undergoing some routine maintenance. And we're going to have rain for now, 6 straight days. Webbed feet by Thursday.
I thought it was April showers bring May flowers.
That's right, and May flowers bring the Colts. That's correct. But we're doing it early this year.
Mm.
So what we're doing is we're doing March showers bring April flowers, and then April flowers, we'll see whether or not that means new contracts. Because the Colts are in the situation, we've been talking a lot about it. My one concern for the Colts, I mean, there are a lot of concerns I have about the Colts, but one of them is this. The simple fact of the matter, and I'll go back to, and I know that I do this a lot, but we all have tendency to speak in a language, not of that we're learning from our colleague in the hallway, but rather the language of what we know and what our precedent tells us. And what I know is I covered the greatest show on turf. And it was an unbelievable run. I still can name, and I don't even know how I can, basically the entire starting offense of the 99, 2000, 2001 St. Louis Rams. They were unbelievable. Marshall Faulk, Kurt Warner, Oz Hakeem, Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce. I think it was Ernie Conwell, Roland Williams, Ricky Prohl. Unbelievable. And that offense, because of the fact of the quick drop release from Kurt Warner and spreading it out in basically basketball on grass, okay? That entire offense was so high flying that, and yes, the Patriots were the ones that came in, no real stars, but solid defensively, junk defenses. And they, Vinatieri hits the field goal. And just as the Rams were the ones that we thought were going to be that of the copycat league, it in fact was kind of the Patriots that people then tried to replicate. I mean, yes, the Colts tried to be high flying with Manning, and then the Bengals tried to do what they were doing with Carson Palmer and that group. But the blueprint of the defensive, no major stars blueprint of New England was then kind of replicated as well. So I began to realize that it was a copycat league, a trend league. And when you look right now at what Seattle just did, Sam Darnold drafted by the Jets. You get a pass when you get drafted by the Jets. Not a great situation. And then has to go and become a journeyman with a circuitous route to ending him up in Seattle. And Seattle had a fast defense, aggressive front four, two really solid backs that complemented one another. And I don't mean that they sat like in the huddle saying, "You look nice today." Well, so do you. I like your cleats. Not that kind of compliment. With an E, not an I. And of course, very good receivers. I think Seattle showed right now in the NFL that you don't necessarily need the Mahomes quarterback, the high-flying Star Wars numbers, if you will, in order to win. And for that reason, if there are teams out there that are saying we are in a position where we have a really good defense, we've got a couple of nice backs in the backfield, we just need quarterback competency and stability and consistency, and we can be Seattle. And there are teams right now that may well feel on their roster like that's where they are. Atlanta may be that. You know, they may say, you know what, we've been waiting on Michael Penix, but we're just going to go. Let's go. Let's make a move here. Arizona is probably going to move on from Kyler Murray, but what do they feel about the quarterbacking position, right? Minnesota, we've talked about. New York, the Jets may look at it and say, you know what, we have good players at the receiver spot. We've invested a little bit in defense. Justin Fields did not get it done for us, but we saw what Daniel Jones did across the street when he had a really good year for the Giants and then was playing at MVP discussion level play before his injury. Maybe New York says, this is it. Because it's a very dry year. Eddie, do you happen to have in front of you a list of NFL quarterbacks that are free agents this season?
Give me 30 seconds.
I believe the often mispronounced Marcus
Mariota,
right?
Yep.
Haven't we always said that? Marcus Mariota?
Mariota, not Mariota. Like Mario.
Mariota.
Yeah, Mariota. Not Mariota.
Gotcha.
Mariota.
Okay. Even though everybody has been calling him Mariota forever, right?
Right.
So Marcus Mariota.
Yes, I've got the list.
Okay. Give me the team and or the college and see if I can guess the quarterback. There's a reason we'll do this exercise. We'll go with the top 6, okay?
Okay. Duke.
Out of Duke, right?
Yes.
Aside from Daniel Jones?
Okay, no.
Okay.
Cal.
Okay, from California. Fernando Mendoza.
He would not be a free agent.
Jared Goff is not a free agent, right?
Nope.
Kyle Bowler.
Huh? Excuse me?
Cal's had more quarterbacks than you think. Wait a minute. Oh, you hit me.
Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
Now, if this person went to multiple colleges, do you want me to list both or just one?
Russell Wilson.
Okay. You already listed Marcus Mariota.
A pack of Badgers, right? Okay. Marcus.
Mm-hmm. BYU.
Oh, the little fella who's got the hot mom and then he went out with her friend, right?
Yeah.
Zach Wilson?
Yes.
And then Malik Willis is in there as well, is he not?
Oh, yeah, good call. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So far, right?
Yeah, but he's going to command over $30 million, so I took him off the board.
I think Malik Willis is shown that he can be a good player.
Okay.
Where's Trey Lance? His name usually floats about in these situations.
Virginia Tech.
The next guy is Virginia Tech?
That's another option, yeah.
Hit me.
Tyrod Taylor.
Okay. Doesn't it feel like he's like 35 years old?
Yeah, I'll give you one more. North Carolina. I think he's North Carolina.
Sam Howell. Is it? I can't believe that Howell? Is that right?
No, he went to Notre Dame.
No. Okay, who's the one from Sam, right?
No. This guy did go to North Carolina.
Who's the one from Carolina that was with Washington?
That was Sam Howell.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, no.
Yeah. He was North Carolina,
Who am I
right?
thinking of? That went to Notre Dame.
Well, Riley Leonard's Notre Dame.
No, before Riley Leonard.
Oh, the one that transferred from was Riley
Hartman.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Sam Howell. Good poll, but not him.
I don't know.
Mitchell Trubisky.
Oh, wow. Okay. My point being, of those, Daniel Jones probably at this age. Now, Russell Wilson at his peak was a better quarterback. Aaron Rodgers at his peak was a better quarterback. But if you're looking for a quarterback for a 4 to 5 year window, 3 to 5 year, maybe even better, then Daniel Jones is right there towards the top. And you can look at that and say, we are a franchise that feels we're close. Now, the Colts theoretically have the inside track. But in a copycat league with reports over the weekend that the Colts are farther away from a deal with Daniel Jones than they originally anticipated, it does make you wonder. It does make you wonder, okay, so what do all of a sudden now, are they in a situation, did the Colts paint themselves into a corner? And I go back to, I think we, all of us, by human nature, if things just seem to work themselves out for us, we become, become conditioned to believe that that means that the precedent says that things always end up working themselves out. And you can unfortunately become accustomed to the exception versus the rule. And someone said to me one time, the danger in life exists when you begin living by the rule and, living by the exception and not the rule. And I think the Colts have lived by the exception for a couple of years and dodged the bullet. I spelled it out earlier, but if you look at their pursuit of a franchise quarterback after the Andrew Luck retirement, and that feels like forever ago. You know why? Because it was, especially in NFL terms. But they went out and kind of kicked the can, and then it's like, okay, Phillip Rivers was available. Jacoby Brissett first, and kudos to the Colts for having the foresight for making the trade for Jacoby Brissett. Of course, they thought that Luck was going to be a potential beginning of the year injury casualty, so they went out and got Brissett. But if you look realistically at first it was Rivers, kind of an 11th hour, like it fell into our lap. Okay, great. Then after that, it was, look, you need to get a franchise quarterback. And, oh, you know what? We got Frank Reich here, and he has a relationship. He knows Carson Wentz. And so you end up with Carson Wentz. And Jim Irsay didn't like Carson Wentz. Rightly so. And so Jim Irsay says, I'm not going to play. We're not going to play with this guy. So they go back to the drawing board. And even then, it was like, man, what are the Colts going to do at quarterback? And if you remember, when they got Matt Ryan, we have Matt Ryan, as it was said during a broadcast. When they got Matt Ryan, that was also an 11th hour sign. I mean, it literally fell into their lap. And so, and I'm not saying I blame him for it. I think Chris Ballard, to an extent, when it comes to the quarterback situation and position, looked at it historically and said, these things have a way of working themselves out. And I had an executive, a sports executive in this town tell me, matter of fact, I'll tell you exactly what it was. I remember the exact scenario. When Reggie Miller was retiring, yeah, I'm going a little bit back, I get it. But when Reggie Miller was retiring, I was doing a story on Reggie Miller's retirement and the end of his career. And so I interviewed Donnie Walsh, who had drafted Reggie Miller, whose birthday was yesterday, by the way. Donnie Walsh, happy birthday. So I'm interviewing Donnie Walsh, and I say, did you know when you drafted him that he was a franchise player? Did you say in that year's draft, this is the guy that we are going to build around. He's our franchise. He's going to be our franchise player. They already had Chuck Person. And Donnie said, I actually was looking heavily at Kevin Johnson. And Kevin Johnson was a player that I really liked. And the more that I looked at Kevin Johnson, I also liked the size of Reggie Miller because of his length at 6'7". And so, and I believe that that's QR, Eddie.
6'7".
I believe that I can't remember if Kevin Johnson even went before Reggie. But Donnie Walsh said something to me in that moment that always stuck with me about team building. And I'm not saying it's not the case with Chris Ballard. But Donnie Walsh said to me, some of the moves that I made or things that happened, we got lucky because they were my secondary plan, but I had to immediately pivot to it when plan A went away. I've mentioned this several times on the radio. I've always thought it was a great epiphany, not only about sport, but life in general, that it wasn't raining when Noah built the ark. And so you best be prepared. And in the case of Chris Ballard, I think that, and so therefore, the Pacers always kind of had a backup thing ready to go if plan A evaporated before their eyes. And I'm not saying that Chris Ballard doesn't operate that way, but he has been fortunate in the fact, at least seemingly, that he, in the times when it looked like maybe he did not have that plan B, a plan B literally fell out of the sky for him, and it just worked itself out. And so, as would be the case with any of us, when you get saved by fate on more than a couple of occasions, you start to then just assume that fate is your friend. And I think it's entirely possible that the Colts now are in a situation with two very key players, potentially one of the two needing to be tagged because they opted for approach of assuming that fate was still their friend and it was just going to work itself out. And I'm not saying that Daniel Jones is Miles Turner, but I think it's entirely possible that the Colts thought, and Daniel Jones may have even hinted to the fact that this, and I think this is probably where Daniel Jones wants to be, but wanting to be somewhere for the tune of 3 years at $105 million and wanting to be somewhere versus turning down somebody that's going to give you 3 years at $125 million are two different things. And if an Arizona or a Cleveland is willing to come out of nowhere and give you some absurd contract, in Cleveland's case, probably not the case because they've got so much still wrapped up into Deshaun Watson. But if some other franchise is willing to say to Daniel Jones, and I know there's no legal tampering or whatever it may be, but if the indication is there that because it's a copycat league and because the blueprint was just illuminated by Seattle, that competent quarterbacking play can win for you if you have better else of roster. For that reason, it is possible that Daniel Jones and his representation may say, we assume because it's a copycat league, if this knucklehead that was ranked 482nd in his high school graduating class on the radio in Indianapolis, Indiana, can figure out that a copycat league means that my price tag might have ticked up a little bit, then surely other teams are discussing the fact that I could be an option for them. And surely the Colts are aware of that. And Daniel Jones may be saying, don't come talking to me just yet because it's in my best interest to find out what New York or Pittsburgh or Cleveland or Arizona may be willing to pay for me in a copycat league. So the Colts say, oh gosh, we thought for sure that we would just use the tag on Pierce because we were just going to come to a good faith agreement with Daniel Jones. But Daniel Jones now all of a sudden, he wants to see other people. And if that's the case, then we got to use the tag on Pierce and run the risk of losing Daniel Jones. And then where do you turn? Zach Wilson? Malik Willis, who's going to cost the same? Marcus, now is it Mariota?
There you go.
Mariota. Any of those? That's the predicament that they're in. I think the Colts are in a real slippery situation here. Now, again, it may, in fact, work itself out. It may, in fact, work itself out. And it probably will. But it's a dangerous way to live. It's a dangerous way to live. Which one do you believe of the two will be tagged, Eddie? Because I think one of them's going to be tagged.
I think there's a more concerted effort to get a deal done with Daniel Jones first, because Jeremy Fowler of ESPN reported over the weekend that, and I think Stephen Holder echoed the same sentiment on X, is that the Colts have told Alec Pierce that he will be a Colt. He's not going anywhere. And so to me, that kind of signals that they're making a very, very strong and concerted effort to get Daniel Jones done. But the problem the Colts have, as you just illuminated there, Jake, is that Daniel Jones has all the leverage in these contract negotiations. The only thing the Colts have to stand on is the fact that, hey, you haven't really played a full season in your NFL career.
Hey,
and
we
just
gave
tore
you your
Achilles.
shot, right? You know
but
what I mean?
he could come back and say, hey, I took a discount to come here this past year. Minnesota offered him more money to stay with the Vikings. He took a little bit of a discount and decided to come to Indianapolis and bet on himself to beat Anthony Richardson in training camp in the quarterback competition. Guess what? He did. So now it's all right, time to pony up. And if you're Daniel Jones, Jake, I mean, I can't fault a player at any point in their career for wanting to secure the bag, as the kids say.
Of course.
But he's got all the leverage.
QR for get paid.
He's got all the leverage, despite the fact that he's coming off a torn Achilles. Because there's not much of a market. And the Colts have another decision to make on who they're going to pay and who's getting the tag.
The consensus seems to be that it's 50-50 that whether or not he will sign with Indianapolis. And I think the Colts thought it was a slam dunk, not even discussion, like 1 hour meeting. I really do. I really do think that they thought it was going to. And I'm not damning them for it. But again, it becomes dangerous when you assume that fate is always going to be your friend.
And do you, in the Daniel Jones side of this, Jake, with the leverage, are you wanting an extra year? Are you wanting 4 instead of 3? Or are you wanting more guaranteed money, or are you wanting more money in general? Those are the kind of questions I've got with the whole situation.
Yeah, fair.
Because the shorter deal gives you another chance to secure another payday, but it also gives the team the ability to get out of that contract
I think
sooner.
if I'm Daniel Jones and I look at my health history, I'm taking the money up front.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm taking the money that's there. Yesterday, IndyCar was in St. Petersburg, and it was not until the 11th hour when we found out that a very familiar name and face within Team Penske, Tim Cindric, would be back as the race strategist for Scott McLaughlin, formerly the president of the organization, of course, stepping away from that role after a couple of indiscretions that took place, but now he's back. Yesterday, McLaughlin finished second, one spot below where he started. He started on pole, but a solid weekend for the team. But Tim Cindric is going to join us on the other side to discuss kind of all of it, the emotions of the return next.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
IndyCar season is underway. The debut race of the 26th season taking place yesterday on the streets of St. Petersburg. It was Alex Palou winning in pretty impressive fashion. Running right behind him was the guy that was the pole sitter, Scott McLaughlin, and in Scott McLaughlin's ear for the course of the race, a longtime staple within the paddock, and of course the president at one time of Penske, Team Penske, and then a bit of a vacation, but he is back in the paddock in Tim Cendrick, who joins us now on the Java House Cold Brew Coffee guest line. First off, Tim, how are you? It's a pleasure to have you.
Good, man. How you doing, Jake?
You know what? I can't complain. I'm curious from your standpoint, and I want to get into just kind of your emotions of all of it in a minute. But when you are a car that starts on pole, and really McLaughlin, I thought, had a solid day running. It didn't look like you guys had any sort of an issue or he put the tire wrong anywhere. And then you finish in second. Still a solid finish to be on the podium. But do you take away from that that it was a good weekend or a weekend where you left something out there?
It was solid. I think to start the season out, that's what you want to do. You don't want to play catch up. But, certainly you want to win the race. That's what we're there to do. But, to sit on the pole and, run second to Alex, right now I think everybody's racing for second until we get just a bit better. I think the speed is there. Scott actually had more speed than he even showed on Saturday. But he drove a great race. He executed. He did everything he could do really to do what we did yesterday. A solid start, but we want more for sure.
I want to get into, Tim, and for those that are unfamiliar with it, and I apologize for having to rehash it this way, but for those that may not be familiar, you've been a longtime staple within that team for Roger Penske and Team Penske. And then, and I can't recall if it was 2 or 3 years ago, but the incident with the push-to-pass capability when in a race that wasn't supposed to be there for 2 of the 3 cars for Penske, and a penalty for that. And then last May, the incident where there were parts on the rear of the car that were not to be touched, and they failed tech inspection. Will Power and Joseph Newgarden had to start the Indy 500 at the back of the field, and then you were one of 3 who were relieved of your duties from the team itself, and then the word coming that you will be returning as the strategist. What was just kind of your emotion through all of that, and maybe even the trying nature of it and things you've learned?
Yeah, thanks for bringing all that back up again. But no, at the end of the day, obviously, I've been with that team since really 1999, and have been through a lot of ups and downs. As a kid, it was the team that I admired. It was the one I always wanted to be with. Roger, he'd always been one of my heroes or whatever. And through all that, first of all, I did nothing wrong. I was simply a victim of certain circumstances. And those that truly know me, they don't question anything relative to my integrity. And really, that's all that really matters at the end. And, the support I've had through those people just reminded me of all that, helped a lot because obviously I put a lot into all that. That's really it in a nutshell, and probably all I really had to say about the whole thing today. And to have the opportunity to really come back and work with people that I really enjoy working with, as I reflected on it, after all that went down, as you can imagine, I had quite a few opportunities to do different things. A lot of them in the IndyCar paddock. And, the difficulty for me was I put so much into the whole Team Penske situation. And, I understand accountability. I get how that works, especially in the corporate world. And if there's a corporate race team out there, it's the one I've worked for even before Roger bought the Speedway and IndyCar and all the rest of it. And some of the voices just got louder when all that happened. And, he was in a situation there where, he had to make some decisions or whatever else. And, for myself, I have to live with those decisions, whether I agreed with them or didn't agree with them or agreed with how the whole process went, with the various parties. What am I going to do? You just have to kind of move on. The hardest thing for me is, when people question your integrity, because it's kind of the easy thing to do when you've, been part of, so much success over the years. I get all that. and I don't blame people for, believing what they read sometimes, but, in this day and age, I've always been really careful to judge, until I know somebody personally or whatever else. But, I had some great conversations with people that I didn't even know in St. Pete that I didn't expect. And all that's pretty helpful when you go through something like that. For me, it's been my passion, motorsports. I've been fortunate enough to experience as much or more success than I ever imagined. And the hard thing for me and all that was really understanding what I wanted to do. Because you're in a situation where, you're not going to live forever. And, I started kind of thinking about the various criteria that I wanted personally. And, for me, I got a great family, I've, got great friends and had a really, really rewarding career at that point. And I didn't want to repeat my steps in terms of, running a race team again or starting one from scratch or trying to bring one from, mid-pack to the front or whatever. Because, I had already stepped aside or tried to step aside, at the end of 2024, just really to live life a bit and kind of experience some things that I hadn't done in 30 or 40 years and reconnect with friends and family in some ways or whatever else. And, I did a lot of that last year, and I did obviously a lot of reflecting on what I wanted to do. And I didn't want to do the same things again, but I missed the competition side of it. And, around the holidays, I thought to myself, man, I need to either just get out of motorsports altogether and forget about it and just say I had a good ride or a great ride, or I need to stay relevant somehow and then let it come to me and see what happens. And, I'd had different people approach me to, hey, how about just go on the weekends? Then you got flexibility to, do whatever else you want to do in life. Come on the weekends, help us out, or, come do a May only deal with, drivers that can win the race and that type of thing. And if you asked me back in August if I wanted to do that, that didn't really hit home for me because I'd kind of been there, done that. And then, around the holidays, I decided, you know what, this thing passes you by real quick if you don't get involved. So I decided, going racing on the weekend still allows me to be involved in a lot of other things and have the flexibility to do what I want to do. And I made the decision to go pursue that. And I had my mind made up where I was going to go and what I was going to do. And, I thought to myself, man, I think so much of the people that I worked with over there, guys like Jonathan Duguid, Travis Law, Matt Johnson, the drivers, the engineers there, just the whole group there, some of these guys, we refer to them as Myron, John Booslog. They'd been there so long. I'd been through so much with them. I don't want them to read about what I'm going to go do for somebody else in the IndyCar paddock without at least letting them know that that's what I'm going to do. So, I reached out to Jonathan Duguid, who's running the team now, and I'd hired him out of college actually back in the ALMS days. I think it was like 2005, and I sent him an email, and I hadn't talked to Roger since August, or hadn't communicated with him even since August. And I copied him on my email to JD and just said, hey, just want you guys to be aware, I'm gonna go pursue something in the paddock on the weekends. Didn't want you to read about it. I assume you guys got your bases covered. If you don't, I'm open to a conversation. I still admire the people that you have and the group that you have. And, for me, I helped obviously put together, a lot of those people. And anyway, the JD reached out pretty much immediately and said, hey, can we sit down and have a conversation about it? Your timing's good. We're trying to figure out how to put our group together, with the most depth that we can have. And Roger reached out within the hour and said, basically, hey, this is something you really want to do. It'd be a win-win for us. So that's how it all went down.
Did you feel the fact that you were able, Tim, to go back to the same team, did you feel like that was kind of an exoneration?
Well, when I mentioned to my wife that I was going to, put together this note to those guys, she was kind of perplexed. Not that, I mean, she loves those people as well, and she's just like, really? And I said, yeah, because regardless of the answer, regardless of what happens, it's going to answer a few questions for me, independent of what the reply is, or if there's not one at all. And, if it happened to all work out, it would probably send a few messages without me having to say anything,
right,
or Roger having to say anything. And so that was my mindset. So, yeah, for sure. I think, for me, having gone through all that over the years and had so much success with so many people in that group, for it to kind of all end in, what I look at as more of a political mess than anything else, I like, hey, if there's a chance to write a different chapter in there and, have a different ending to that whole story, I'd be all for it. So here we are.
Well, Scott McLaughlin was thrilled about it. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Tim Cindric, my guest from Penske, of course, he was the race strategist for Scott McLaughlin, finished second yesterday after landing on pole. And McLaughlin was open about the fact of, the optimism he had to work with you again and the chemistry you guys have. For you personally, though, Tim, were you nervous going into the weekend or just curious as to how you would be received or how all of it would go down?
You're kind of anxious. I guess, for me, I'm at peace with myself. Like I said, there was nothing that I did wrong. I mean, when you're at the top of the totem pole, the head hits the ground hardest, So, I understood all those different things and kind of the side of it. I mean, like as what I said before, for, the people around me and the people that really know me, that's what has always mattered the most to me. And, that proved to be really strong. So I guess I was a bit more nervous about how rusty I was going to be. I mean, honestly, I didn't follow a lot of the races in detail. I'd watch the start or I'd watch the end and go do my thing. But I wasn't, totally engaged last year after all that went down. So there've been a lot of rules that change, people change, roles change. And, I certainly wanted to respect, the management group that's in place there within Penske. And, JD and those guys know that I'm not looking for the job. I'm not trying to promote myself. I just want to do a good job within that environment. And for me, it's really been the past, 8 or 10 years, I guess what I get out of really being part of all that is watching others have success that haven't seen the success that I've been able to experience. And, Scott's somebody that, I met him way back in, and I can't remember if it was 14 or 15, through Marcus Ambrose. And, having the opportunity to kind of go full circle with him from the times we talked about going supercars racing and him coming over to our team there to, the dinners we had over there, talking about, how he could go racing in America to then being on his box in his ear. Yeah, it's a great opportunity and something that I really want to help him succeed in whatever way I can.
Tim,
So,
I know that
that was more for me what I was after. Go ahead.
I know one of the things that you did, because I reached out to you, just before the season began, going to the Olympics had to have been awesome. I mean, just going and seeing it. And I'm curious, I'm assuming you were there from a fan standpoint, but, your son's a racer. You've been around it forever, right? How cool is it, I guess, or what can you learn from watching athletes at the top of their craft in a sport other than the one that you are caught in the minutia in from day to day?
No, it's incredible. Obviously the patriotism is second to none. We had the chance to take our kids when they were teenagers, young teenagers, to the London Olympics in 2012, the Summer Olympics. I actually stayed in Zach Brown's flat, downtown London. Went to the Olympics there, and they never forgot that experience. And, us going to the Winter Olympics, they actually organized it all. And that was what they presented, Meg and I for Christmas, was basically an organized, trip to the Olympics for 7 days or what have you. And, I'll give you an example. We went to the short track speed skating finals, and the only tickets that were available at that time, because it wasn't one of the events that the kids had picked out, but we happened to have a window where we could go, and it was convenient. And I said, my wife, I'm like, we can go sightseeing, or we're here for the Olympics. Let's go to the Olympics. And the only seats that were available were the best seats. And you got to swallow pretty hard sometimes, and you're just like, hey, that's why we're here. Let's just do it. And we had front row seats to the speed skating finals. And the cool thing about it, okay, the races and all that are really good and you're up close, but where our seats were, and you couldn't pick your seats, they just tell you it's in a section. But the athletes would come out of the locker room and actually put their skates on and do the ritual and all that in these chairs literally right below us as you leaned over the rail. And you watch these Olympic athletes getting ready to go basically determine their fate and all the things that they had worked for. And it was just so cool and so rewarding to see all that firsthand in terms of their preparation and then basically the release they had after it was over.
Did you want to get in their ear and tell them when they had to come in and pit and stuff like that? Did you?
No, man, you're there. You're nervous for the guys that have to go reset up the apex pucks during the live event. You're like, you realize if they drop one of those or if they fall, they're going to screw up the whole race. But no, you just get a whole different perspective of it all. And yeah, you just, it's hard to explain it all until you actually see it and experience it firsthand.
Well, Tim, I'll tell you what, man, on a personal level, I told you this at the time when I saw the news you were back. You're always accommodating on pit road, and I've got a great deal of respect for the work that you've done and the accomplishments you've had. And so for you to get the chance to come back and just kind of put that all in the past, my apologies for bringing it up, but it's part of the story, right, as to
the story
of you being back. So, I certainly appreciate it and appreciate the candor today. And Phoenix up next, and then after that, it is a new track, Arlington, going right around where the Dallas Cowboys play. So plenty of racing between now and May to get to. So I appreciate you squeezing a little time for us right now.
Hey, I just want to know who's going to be our quarterback.
That's a good question. I think it's probably going to be Daniel Jones, but I don't know. Do you have any eligibility left after your Hall of Fame basketball career at Rose-Hulman?
No, man, I'm just a fan.
But I think it's going to be Daniel Jones, but we'll see because big day tomorrow with the franchise tag and Alec Pierce hanging in there as well. So we'll see if they can get a deal done. He's a smart cookie, though. I think he's going to get some dollars out of him.
Good deal. Good deal. Hope it all works out.
All right. Appreciate it, Tim.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Tim Cindric joining us on the program. We'll come back. JMV is in the building. We will do the crossover, find out from the good guys at Love Heat and Air. Love-HVAC.com is the website, 317-353-2141. We'll see what John's got cooking next.
So far, a half a dozen lead changers. 3-point field goal, yes.
There's the matchup. Etwan Moore pulled up right in front of Eric Gordon and hit that three-point shot.
That's the third 3-point field goal for Etwan Moore. He has 13 points already. 4-point lead now with 2 minutes and 40 seconds to play. North Central on the high post to Gordon.
Oh, my. He had 4 players around and just took it right to the hole.
25 points now for Eric Gordon and a timeout.
Eric Gordon, of course, North Central High School. Hail our Panthers, by the way. 2007 4A state championship. East Chicago Central did beat the Panthers 87-83. Angel Garcia was a really good player for that team, by the way. But Eric Gordon, of course, the number 2 high school prospect in the class, and Indiana Mr. Basketball before going on. That was the nation's number 2 player, by the way. Going on to Indiana University, got drafted by the Clippers. Long, successful NBA career in his 19th year. And, of course, with the IHSAA State Finals coming up, you can see Eric Gordon or the next star of tomorrow with the tournament getting underway. Keep in mind at IHSAA.org, you can find all of the scheduling, all of the ticket availability to see the stars near you and support your local community and its high schools. Find out everything you need about the Indiana High School Basketball Tournament that tips off tomorrow night at IHSAA.org.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
J&B has arrived. The crossover. I enjoyed listening to some of the takeover on Saturday night, right? Yes. You mostly 90s stuff, right?
Yes, my microphone working. I can't tell. There it is now. All right, now I'm in. Yeah. Is this frozen up too?
Yeah, the crossover.
Could you tell when I was frozen out for like 25 minutes, I think, and I was bouncing back and forth from my laptop to the hard drive?
It was fun, though, right?
Yeah, I have a good time. It makes you – it's like working radio without a net. And normally any longer that's not the case because everybody in radio, especially in music, and my apologies to anybody that's offended by it, but who cares? You guys half-ass it. That's why you half-ass it by, doing your little voice tracking crap 2 days prior. I'm in there live. You work without a net. That's the way it's stinking supposed to be, brother.
What was the best request you did?
Probably, let me think. The best one, it was weird. It was probably Not a Surf Popular. Remember that New Jersey band?
Right.
I'm popular. It's a weird sound, very unique, 90s, and you could tell this is from the 90s. Surf.
Did I hear at one point, and it might not have been this Saturday, was there one of them where you played Another Bad Creation?
Yes. I have played ABC, Playground, Aisha, a couple of different times. That works.
1991, baby. What's on the big show today? Obviously, we talked plenty about the fact the tag's coming up tomorrow for the Colts.
Can you believe that we have to debate this on Daniel Jones? How low can we go? I'm almost to a point where, and I know they know they're going to end up getting him. Where else?
You would hope.
Else? It's almost like
John,
a Castellini thing. Where else you going? Where else you going? What else you doing? Both of you guys.
The Jets, Minnesota. I mean, what if somebody just decides to completely throw him?
What if the Colts were to decide just to go get Kyler Murray?
Right. No,
for 1 year, because we're talking about a lame duck group the way that it is, and he's a lame duck guy.
Gardner
so what
Minshew?
the hell? Yeah, just 1 year. 1 year gets you down the road. I just can't believe.
It's brilliant. Here's the thing. If they go that route and they say, we're going to sign Minshew for 1 year and just reset this whole thing all over again and then draft somebody, then Ballard buys himself 5 more years, right?
Let me tell you, it's almost like this. It's two miseries that either have to come together or why are we even jacking around with it? You got a guy that for the better part of 6 years has been injured or ineffective. You have a team for the better part of 10 years that has been very ineffective, mediocre at best. I mean, these two entities need and deserve one another. This shouldn't be that hard. It should.
I know.
And I would bet it's probably
John,
not that hard. It's probably been made in the media, the national media especially, much harder than it probably is.
It's hard to believe. You have to remind yourself that in other cities, Seattle, San Francisco, the Colts franchise right now is probably what we think of like New Orleans or Carolina. They're just there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And whoever would have guessed that'd be the case.
Yeah, they're the laughing stock right now.
Right.
They're just what we used to make fun of the Bengals about all the time.
That's
too.
right.
Hey, by the way, can we allow a basketball team collegially to do anything well around here as we're into the month of March? Is that okay? Can you guys
Purdue
play?
losing a game that pushes Indiana out, right?
Lord, what? Lenardi still has them in, right?
But he had an update. I looked at it, and that was the last I saw. He had them as the last in, but that was done Saturday morning.
Oh, was it really?
I don't know if it's been updated.
I thought that he still had them as the final team in.
But the other teams that were sitting there on the outside looking in all lost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everybody's circling the right. Yeah, let's go to 120 teams because at 68, they're so competitive.
Very exciting. You really got to squeeze that IU team. That's a must-see TV right there, watching that act.
All right, John, what do they call it at Indiana State that you got to do?
I got to hit the Sycamore signal. By the way, too, I'm going to Butler Wednesday. They hit like a ton of threes yesterday and won by 15,
You missed the
16
half quarter,
points.
right? Did I see that?
With the putt.
Oh, the putt.
They made me putt. Yeah, I couldn't shoot a basketball. They made me putt.
Parks Place Pub. We were there Saturday night.
Uh-huh.
They've got flags of basically every school. I noticed that they did not have IU Indy and Indiana State.
What?
So I called Luke
Sleeper.
Basso. We're going to go over and present them with a Jags flag. Sounds weird, doesn't it? With an IU Indy flag. I'll leave the Indiana State one up.
I'll do that. What's Sleater's problem not having Indy? Because he went to Southern Illinois for one.
They do have Southern Illinois.
Yeah, that's why. He's a Saluki, so
Good
he's not
place,
going to
though.
have Indiana State up, and he butt sniffs Illinois.
Good
So,
place,
yeah.
though.
I love him to death, but he butt sniffs Illinois.
All right, John's up next. We'll be back with you at noon tomorrow. I thank you for listening to Query and Company.